Hello, friends. How we doing? How we feeling? Welcome in. Just gonna make sure that y'all can hear me before we get started here, and then we will hop in to more Our Life Beginnings and Always. How we feeling? How we doing? We vibing? We chillin'? I hope. We're gonna do a quick little sound check here, make sure that y'all can actually hear me. Once we're sure of that, beautiful. Okay, y'all do hear me. Fantastic. For anyone who doesn't know, this is Our Life Beginnings and Always. Super fucking cute game, super sweet visual novel. Yeah, and we grow up with our boy, Cove Holden. He is soft boy, he is ocean boy, he is everything. However, he is not the main, he is not the person that is the center of attention. Right now, we are actually hanging out with our dude, Derek Suarez. Derek Suarez is sweet little boy golden retriever energy. Very super supportive, very super sweet, will do anything for you. We love Derek for that. So today's goal is going to be getting through Boardwalk. We will go through the Boardwalk moment. No, I am not streaming over on TikTok. We're only on Twitch here. I've tried doing the streaming on TikTok at the same time. However, depending on what I'm playing, I find it easier to not have to censor my language like I do when I'm on TikTok, because Twitch is a lot more laid back about things. So, no, people who find me over here. At some point, I would love to have a setup for being on Twitch the same time I'm on TikTok for, like, when we're having our conversations and I'm doing, like, my advocacy work. I'm being careful not to call it a debate because I don't... Yeah, I can cuss here. Hold on, I wasn't able to cuss on TikTok. Let's just... Real quick. Fuck, shit, god damn it. I can get it out here. Okay, we're good. Mostly with this game, I will say that it's really fucking cute. I adore this game. It is really fucking wholesome. Mind you, I am playing the paid for DLC, but there is plenty, like, you can get the main game for free and hang out with Cove Holden yourself. So if you want to hang out with the sweet ocean boy, go ahead and do that. But yeah, so today will be Boardwalk. Tomorrow will be in between step 2 and 3, meaning that by Friday, we will be back on step 3. We will be on step 3 and back hanging out with Cove, having some Ocean Boy time. Yeah, TikTok was oof today. But it's okay, we're gonna shelf the TikTok talk, as in the speak of TikTok, and we are going to move on and have ourselves a little fun chill time. Apparently we're going to a boardwalk. I think that's absolutely adorable, so I am hyped as hell right now. But yeah, hang out, chill vibe. If you like the game, cool beans. If not, it's not for everyone, and that's perfectly a-okay. I love it for its inclusivity, and I get to grow up as, like, baby Blake, which is so healing to my inner child. Considering the game starts off with you being, I think it's 8 years old, and now we're 13. So living life as Blake is just really fucking cute. But we are going to... I got my water. I don't know if anyone else is dealing with it, but it is hot and humid as hell where I am, so lots of water. But yeah, we're gonna hop on into it. Let's fucking go, buddies. It was early morning, but the day was already buzzing with excitement. Your whole family was gathered together with all 5 Suarezes in their cozy living room. Today you are all making a trip out to a boardwalk set park. It was a regular enough outing for Derek's family, but it would be your first time going. The boardwalk was a few hours away, and it was even further when setting out from Sunset Bird. That's why the adults decided on the meetup here at the Suarez's apartment instead of gathering at the boardwalk itself. It gave your moms a little break from driving, and everyone got their last chance to run to the bathroom. for the bathroom. You would be leaving very soon. While you waited for the trip to officially start, you sat on the couch with your hands in your lap. For a few minutes now, you tried to keep track of what the group gathered around the kitchen counter were up to. Elizabeth, your moms, and Mrs. Suarez were all busily making preparations from what you could tell. Meanwhile, Mr. Suarez had his hands full rounding up his two youngest kids. It seemed they were taking an anti-shoe stance that morning, and in Nicholas's case, he needed to be talked into wearing a shirt too. On the cushion next to you, Derek was pumped for what the boardwalk had to offer. He was rambling a mile a minute about all the fun stuff he couldn't wait to show you. I think I'd be excited about it. It's hot in Cali too. Yeah, it's so warm and humid here, so it's just sticking to everything, and I'm like, ew, I hate it. Yeah, excited about it too. Bouncing your leg, you struggled to contain your energy. You were just as eager to experience everything he described. This journey was also the first time your and Derek's families were doing a big activity together. You couldn't believe it originally when the adults went through with organizing the trip. Kids, come join us in the kitchen. It's time to pack your treat bags. Cool. Sliding off the couch, you didn't have the faintest idea what Mrs. Suarez meant, but you were summoned, and so you followed Derek's lead. He turned to say something over his shoulder. He'd guessed that line might have been confusing to a newcomer. Snack bags are what we do for larger trips. Me and my brothers, and you and Elizabeth too, we get to fill a little plastic baggie with any sweets and stuff we want. It's supposed to be for eating during the hours-long drive, but no one really cares when we snack. It's just so we have something if we need it. I like that. It's really nice. I think that's cute as hell. Little snack bags. I think so too. It's great to have on hand. As you reached the kitchen, Elizabeth breezed past you with your moms following at a more relaxed pace. Derek raised a skeptical brow and pointed in her direction with his thumb. Doesn't she want a bag? Elizabeth stopped and spun around on her heel. Surprised, Derek pulled his hand back to his side. Elizabeth's lips curled into an all-too-pleased smirk. You heard Mrs. Suarez. She called for the kids to come. Oh boy. Ma shook her head at Elizabeth's taunting display. Your sister stepped forward and held up a zipped bag that you hadn't noticed before. I already got mine while we were getting things set up for the rest of you. Elizabeth, do you have to be so you about everything? Can't you just be chill? Her baggie was full of dried fruits and chocolate chips. She teasingly dangled it in your face and then in Derek's. Very mature, Elizabeth. You're not one of the kids at all. I love Mom. I don't know, shake your head, 'cause what is this foolishness? No one cares you got your shit first. There was little that you found amusing about her teasing, and it was written all over your face. Elizabeth withdrew her bag of treats, letting her hands rest at her sides. After that, she left the kitchen and plopped down in your old spot on the couch. Your moms joined her, putting Elizabeth in the middle. Ma comfortingly patted Elizabeth's leg. Glancing back towards the kitchen, Jorge and Nicholas were finally dressed and they dashed ahead of you. They excitedly crowded around their mom's legs. Now don't forget that the bag actually has to be able to close for it to count. She began passing out baggies to her two youngest. Then And then Mrs. Suarez turned to you and winked. That's my one rule for treat bags, but other than that, feel free to go crazy. Nicholas and Jorge took that as their cue to rush up to the counter lined with tasty options and started stuffing their bags. Mrs. Suarez handed you and Derek your own plastic baggies. Now that it was in your hand, you realized that it was the smallest zip bag size. There was no way you were going to get a little bit of everything. From my experience, you can fit about 4 handfuls of stuff before it starts getting too tough to close. Thanks for the tip, Derek. We love Derek. I'll have to strategize then. Thanks. The younger boys swiftly finished selecting their road trip treats. Jorge's bag closed easily, while Nicholas's was proving a challenge to squeeze shut. The plastic was ballooned out on the sides, entirely full of cookies and candy. His brow pinched as he struggled with the zip. To everyone's surprise, Nicholas got it to seal, and he proudly held the bag up for his mom's inspection. Impressed, she nodded. Don't forget to take a water bottle too. We don't want to lose anyone to dehydration today. The 2 boys held their prizes tightly and grabbed the water bottles off the edge of the counter on their way out of the kitchen. It was your turn now at the buffet, and the spread was delicious. Ooh, okay. What do we want? I personally love peanuts, almonds. I like sunflower seeds, and we're gonna go with some plain crackers. Plain crackers are good too. You know what I think I'm gonna have after the stream today? I think I might have, we picked up some stuff at the store. Some pretzels and hummus might be the way to go for my after stream snack. Yeah. We'll go with the plain crackers. Why not? Enjoy! Humming happily, you ran your hand across the side of the plastic baggie. You were grateful for your haul, and you proudly showed it to Derek. He gave you a thumbs up. Variety is the spice of life. He closed his bag, and you realized that it was completely full of a bunch of different things too. Chuckling, you gently poked the straining side of his plastic baggie. Yes, it is. Derek leaned across the counter for the water bottles. He slid one over for you to take and grabbed one for himself too. Okay, I'll close up the snacks then. We can leave this out here for now. We don't have any more time to lose. Are we all ready? Several voices called back, answering yes. Mrs. Suarez raised an eyebrow and walked out of the kitchen. No one needs to go potty? No. I don't have to go potty. Good. Anyone have questions before we go? She put her hands on her hips and glanced around the apartment. Mr. Suarez raised his hand just as he caught her eye. I'd like to know how we will arrange the rides. There's room for 5 in the back of our car and room for 3 in the Thrasher car. There is room to switch who's bringing who if there's a want for that. That's interesting because I think room for 3. I imagine, I don't understand my mom's car in this game because passenger seats and then 2 in the back. We know that Cove and I have been, you know what? The technicalities, the math doesn't have to math. It's a video game. Forget it. Yeah. There's room to switch who's bringing who if there's a want for it. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Elizabeth and Blake are welcome to ride with us. or Derek can feel free to go with Pamela and Nolani. Nicholas and Jorge are staying in our van, though. Frustrated, both smaller boys pouted at their exclusion. Jorge's jaw clenched as he crossed his arms. Oh yeah, they're talking about in the back, so they're not the front seats. Ignore me, my brain fucking lagged. Not including the front seats, because the front seats are for parents, so 5 in the back of one, 3 in the back of the other. I got you. We got there. It's fine. I'm not a baby. Why do I gotta stay in the van? I'm not a baby. Oh boy. Nicholas, you know you still need a booster seat. We can't put that in their car. Mr. Suarez chuckled at Nicholas's angry grumbling as he passed by into the kitchen, aiming to pick at the remaining snacks. Mrs. Suarez sighed in a tickled but still a long-suffering way. Dad and I need you there to stay awake for such a long drive. Can you two please keep us company on the car ride? Releasing a deep breath, Jorge nodded. He knew this wasn't the day his mom was going to relent. Nicholas, on the other hand, continued to pout. Okay, Mom. Well, what do you think, Lonnie? Either way is fine with me. It's up to the kids to decide which they'd prefer. I'll stick with Mom's. She then curiously shifted her attention to you. The corner of her mouth pulled into a smirk because she knew that you and your friend were the ones that whole decision was for. Derek leaned in close to you, cupping a hand to the side of his mouth so only you could hear him. Blake, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? He inched back and nervously scratched the side of his neck. His cheeks turned a darker shade of pink. Well, it'd be cool if you rode with me and my family. Okay, sounds good. Look at the little blushy boy. I love him. He's so sweet. Then let's go with your idea. Really? Cool. Because I feel like Derek only ever thinks about what everyone else wants to do, so I kind of like that my character is like, hey, what are you thinking? What does Derek want? We'll go with your plan or your thought. Kind of forces him to like have an opinion and have a say on some stuff, and I like that for him. Okay, now that that's settled, we'll see you there. See you soon, sweetie. Oh, hold on. One last thing. Mrs. Suarez went over to your mom's and quickly went into some last-minute advice on the directions. While you waited, you noticed out of the corner of your eye that Mr. Suarez had moved on from nibbling at the snacks. Instead, you caught him passing Jorge and Nicholas an extra cookie each. Genuine cheer came back to both of their expressions. They were so thrilled about the secret cookies that their earlier bitterness about being babied was all sweetened out. And that was that. Snacks and drinks were set, no one needed to go potty, the rides were arranged, directions were obtained, and it was finally time to get the trip started. The two families left the condo behind, chattering with eagerness for the day's activities. At the parking lot, the group split up to get into their different cars. You followed Derek into his parents' minivan. Buckling up, you settled in for the long haul. Here we go. The Suarez minivan was a full house. Mr. Suarez hopped behind the wheel with his wife sitting shotgun. She bent back to double-check that Nicholas was fully strapped into the car seat behind her. Hi, Darkwing. How are you? Welcome in. Derek, of course, had to sit in the open seat in that second row. That left you and Jorge to take control of the way back. Blech. Mrs. Suarez's brow furrowed with frustration. Once again, it became a battle. The wiggling 6-year-old fought against her attempts to tighten the car seat's front straps. Once she succeeded, Mrs. Suarez brushed the hair that fell forward behind her ear and turned to the rest of you with a lighter expression. Are we all ready? Yes. Yeah, Mom. Yep, all set. Good. She made sure Nicholas was secured one last time before getting herself situated properly. You heard the click of her seatbelt, and then Mrs. Suarez shifted her attention this time to the last row of seats. It's so nice to have you here, Blake. Thanks for having me. Of course. All of us are happy for the added company. Now that everyone was settled in, the car roared to life and Mr. Suarez pulled onto the road. Out of habit, he reached over and clicked the CD player on. Upbeat children's music loudly filled the car. I love that Derek's family is so, open and warm and inviting, and they just want my character to feel welcome, and it's so fucking sweet. I can't. Squealing with excitement, Nicholas started kicking his feet to the beat of the song. Next to you, Jorge leaned an elbow on the car door and rested his chin in the palm of his hand. There was a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth as he settled in to stare out the window. You caught Derek's green-eyed gaze peeking at you from the space between the headrest and the backrest of the seat. You waved at him. Derek moved out of sight, but only to twist around in the seat to talk to you directly. Thanks for coming with us on the drive. I can't wait for you to see the boardwalk. It's gonna be so fun. Look at this happy boy. He's literally just a little ray of sunshine, and I love him. You only got as far as opening your mouth when Nicholas erupted into a stream of loud cheers. The young boy threw both his arms in the air, and Derek ducked in his seat, clearly embarrassed. Woo! Nicholas's outburst didn't surprise you one bit. A tiny chuckle escaped Derek as he slowly slid his gaze back over to you. Sorry about that, Blake. The whole drive is probably gonna be this rowdy. I don't mind. Genuinely, that's what you sign up for in a car with this many kiddos. Especially, can I just say, I'm probably biased, but I think Nicholas here is my goddamn favorite. His whole Derek's back thing is just so iconic. I love him. He's such a little sweetie. Joined the celebration chatting about the day's plan. All three brothers immediately jumped in to tell you all about their favorite places and which rides they considered to be the coolest. Even Derek's parents chimed in with their favorite spots to visit. Later during the drive, Nicholas let out a gleeful squeal. You were confused at first at what managed to get that reaction out of him, but soon it became clear. Nicholas remembered he had an entire baggie of snacks. Fair response. He triumphantly pulled it out of his pocket and started munching away at all the tasty treats inside. For once, Jorge followed Nicholas's lead and relaxed into a chill snack time. Jorge munched away while watching the world pass by out his window. Derek, on the other hand, simply rested back into his seat with his arms behind his head. I'd save my snacks for later. I think it'll definitely be better later on. Resting your head back, you had a hunch that these snacks would be a lifesaver once your stomach started growling later. After Nicholas had devoured every crumb and licked every bit of sugar from his fingers, he was ready to play again. And so, the ride continued on to the blasting beat of classic kindergarten tunes and with fun road trip games. And despite the trip supposedly taking hours, It didn't feel long until you noticed the first sign of your destination. With building anticipation, you caught the first flashes of the tall rides in the distance. Both families pulled into the parking lot, and the kids excitedly bounced out of the cars. The parents cheerfully waved at each other as the groups closed the distance between them. With everyone regrouped, the families strolled onto the boardwalk. Your eyes widened. The place was even more amazing than you'd imagined. Look at this. This is so cute. You can see the Ferris wheel, and there's got little bikes and stuff. I love this. The art in this game is too fucking good. Water break! Woo! Y'all make sure you're staying hydrated. It's important for your brains and your bodies. It was like you stepped into a bright world of color. There were shops displaying various beach towels and boogie boards decorated with either popular cartoon characters or tropical flowers. I feel like Cove would fucking love this. Clothing stalls had racks of sundresses, cover-ups, and swimwear in every pattern imaginable. Ahead, you could make out the colorful tufts of stuffed animals from the prize boards. Darts, ring toss, skee ball, and more waited further down the boardwalk. Music filled the air, but when you listened closely, you could make out so much more. There were various cheers and shouts of victory, joy, and fear. The screams had to be coming from the massive wooden roller coaster that towered beyond the stalls. From what you could tell already, this boardwalk was easily 5 times the scale of the entire shopping street in Sunset Bird. Holy nuggets, that's big. Let's see. I think I'd be in good spirits. I don't know if I'd necessarily love it because it's so much bigger, but I'd be in good spirits. Humming happily along to the tunes, you made sure not to lose track of your group as you moved through the crowd. Now that you were seeing it for yourself, you finally understood the intensity behind Derek's descriptions. The group began navigating down the wooden boards. Mrs. Suarez hastily grabbed onto Nicholas's arm for safekeeping, and just in time, too. The bustling mood of the area had Nicholas raring to go. He wanted to see, play, and explore every inch. Unfortunately, the 4 parents were just not as energetic as the hyper 6-year-old. With an affectionate shake of her head, Mrs. Suarez struggled to hold on to Nicholas's tiny hand as he attempted to sprint ahead. Irene, why not let the children go? Huh? This child here and the rest of them. I'm sure they'd rather enjoy the park on their own and at their own pace. They'd be safe with each other. She carefully weighed the scenarios in her mind while Nicholas was too busy trying to forcibly move her forward to notice the important conversation happening. Your mom shared a glance. I'd be alright with that as long as nobody left the boardwalk. It's large, but not too large. The kids are getting older, and they've earned a little freedom from our all-seeing eyes. Okay, adults and kids get to have their own day at the boardwalk. You caught both Elizabeth and Derek perking up. This was clearly a sign of a perfect day ahead for the two. And then Mrs. Suarez passed Nicholas off to her husband for a moment. She motioned for the older kids to circle closer to her. No more treats for Nicholas. He's had enough candy and cookies for the day. I'm counting on you to keep to that. Mr. Suarez over there can't be trusted. Oops. Damn, dude got caught. He stood up straighter and looked away from his wife, pretending that he had no idea what she was talking about. Her knowing smile cracked into a light-hearted laugh. You admired the way that the way her eyes sparkled, teasing her husband. She moved her attention back to the rest of you, and both Jorge and Elizabeth gave her confident nods. "We've got this, Mom." Derek answered with an added thumbs up. Mrs. Suarez proudly beamed, letting her gaze go between her boys. "Derek's right. We got this." "Oh, speaking of getting things, I have some money on hand for me and my brothers. Will you and Elizabeth be able to buy ride tickets and knickknacks or any of that sort of stuff?" "I doubt the pocket change I have is going to be enough for anything." I remembered my wallet." You confidently put your hands on your hips. Unimpressed, Elizabeth rolled her eyes. "Good for you." "Don't worry about it. We were going to spend money on you two today anyways, so there's no harm if we let you have it. Besides, we don't get to go on trips like this every day. Go a little wild." "Exactly. We want you to be able to do things here." Mom dug into her purse and then she pulled out a handful of bills. She carefully counted out $15 and handed it to Elizabeth. Your sister was unimpressed at that amount and recounted the bills herself. Mom handed you your own $15 next, and you quietly chuckled to yourself. You couldn't help but think about how it probably would have been 20 if Mr. Holden was there. "Yeah." "Thanks, Mom." "Thanks, Moms." "We're all set then. We'll meet again here at 8 p.m. in front of this first stall." Mrs. Suarez took her youngest's arm and crouched down to his level. She brushed some stray hairs out of his face. "Go and stay with your brothers today. Be good for them." With an eager nod, Nicholas bolted over to Derek and clung on to his jeans. Derek laughed at the sudden weight and put his hands firmly on the younger boy's shoulders just in case he decided to run off. The two sets of parents disappeared in the crowd, moving towards the nearby stores. Standing on your tiptoes, you caught your moms waving goodbye one last time before they were completely out of sight. Elizabeth spun in a circle, spotting all the things she might want to try. She must have deemed the boardwalk to be cool because she was cheerier by the second. Eventually, her gaze returned to you and the Suarez brothers, and it was clear that her daydreams crashed back to reality. Next to her, Jorge rocked up to his tiptoes, then back down. Catching your eye, he stopped and nervously inched a little closer to Derek. It must feel awkward for a little kid to have two new additions to what was usually a special family affair. You offered him a smile, but tried not to stare at him. You were so eager to get going already. The clock was ticking, and you didn't want to miss a single activity. Derek awkwardly took a couple large steps forward. His strides were wobbly as Nicholas held onto him tighter, but Derek was ultimately unfazed. "Okay, we should start the day right. The face painting stall is up here near the front." "Face painting!" Jorge brightened with that notion, and Nicholas shook Derek as hard as he could without shaking himself off. Derek's grin widened as he laughed at his brother's delight. "Yeah, let's go." "Face painting? Are you serious?" Nicholas was too absorbed with thoughts of paint to notice her attitude, but Jorge's joy vanished instantly. You could pinpoint the exact second Elizabeth remembered how much younger Derek's siblings were. Elizabeth uncrossed her arms, feeling a bit rotten. She cleared her throat and begrudgingly tried to pull back on her visible distaste. "I don't need one. However, of course we can go over to that stall. Anyone who wants to do it should." "That's great. Honestly, there's lots of time to do tons of things, so it's not a big deal if sometimes it isn't what you want to do, right? His green stare hardened. He directed that statement at both the youngest and the oldest member in the crew. Elizabeth snorted, displeased that a kid like Derek was acting like he was in charge. But Derek wasn't in his respectful guest mode, which is what Elizabeth usually saw of him in the neighborhood. Derek was entirely in the eldest brother role. He kept a stern stare on her for another moment before shifting to you. Are you alright with letting my brothers get their faces painted? You can too if you wanna. It's actually a lot of fun. I love Derek, and honestly, I'm fucking hyped for Elizabeth to see him in his eldest brother role, as opposed to being like quiet, respectful Mr. Manners guest that he always is back home. I want to get my face painted too, let's go. Nicholas victoriously bounced, knocking against Derek. You even caught a smile growing back on Jorge's face. Before anyone moved, Derek carefully removed Nicholas's hands from his pants and took a hold of the young boy's hand instead, like his mom had done before. Derek cheerfully pointed ahead with his free hand. Let's go! Woo! Derek led the way for your group. You followed his line of sight to the row of shops and spotted a large, colorful umbrella. As you approached, you noticed 2 open chairs under the shade of that umbrella, one for the artist and the other for the person being painted. Next to it was a canvas posted with a collage of photos. The examples showed off cheeks dotted with daisies, sparkling gold stars shooting over temples, peace signs, and a whole rainbow of butterflies. Skulls and spiders were options for kids who wanted to get their face painted and still look tough. Someone like Cove, you thought to yourself, chuckling. Of course, that was only a joke. You were positive Cove would actually get a fish or a shell or a dolphin or something like that. You peeked at the painting tools in the mirror on the wheeled counter. The artist appeared to be a teen just out of high school or maybe in college. Many of the stalls you passed had younger people running them. The artist eyed your group carefully in return. Hello. Hi, welcome. I'm Xavier. Would you like me to paint your face today? Yes, please. Xavier went over and plopped down on one of the chairs. Derek nudged Jorge towards the other. Do you want to go first? Jorge hesitated and chewed at his bottom lip, but he wasn't sure until he realized that no one else moved to take the open seat. He seized the opportunity and sat down. What can I do for you? I want a football right here. Without missing a beat, Jorge pointed to his forehead. Elizabeth huffed quietly at the conversation, but Xavier gave a serious nod. I can do that, no problem. The artist lightly brushed Jorge's bangs aside and began to work. Next to you, Derek's brow furrowed intently as he studied the picture collage of options. What's up, Derek? But Derek continued to quietly mull things over. He pressed a hand to his chin and sighed. Nicholas will get what I get. I'm not sure what to get 'cause of that. He doesn't like soccer as much as Jorge likes football, so that's probably not the best choice. I could get a car for obvious reasons, but Nicholas also really loves rainbows, and he does already have cars on his shirt. Derek, do you realize that you're literally determining what you get painted on your face because of what Nicholas wants you to? Dude, you put everyone else's feelings too above yours. Stop doing that. Stop it. I love Derek, but I kinda wanna fight him a little bit. Just like a little. You could get a spider. Nicholas can pretend it's a real one and scare people. That'll give him something to entertain himself. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Derek ran an absent-minded hand through his hair as he imagined all the ways his brother would terrorize those within his orbit. He laughed. I think Nico's gonna get a kick out of it. The corners of your lips curled up mischievously. You rubbed your hands together. Excellent. Jorge's football didn't take long to finish at all. He got up with a delighted grin and tried to tip his head enough to see the paint without a mirror. He couldn't, but that didn't put a damper on his fun. One of his hands hovered around the football, and you knew he was fighting the urge to poke at the wet paint. Derek slid onto the customer chair next. Nicholas leaned his hands onto the edge of the seat and intensely watched the artist get to work. As the painting took shape, the smile on Nicholas's face grew until he was cackling. He finally figured it out. The artist proudly added the finishing touches, but then addressed the youngest Suarez instead. Xavier twirled their paintbrush. Now what do you think? It's awesome! Just what I like to hear. You're good to go then. Thank you. Derek took one last glance at himself in the mirror and hopped off the chair. He pointed at the open seat with his thumb. Your turn, Nico. Nicholas clambered onto the chair with a pinched brow. Once he got settled, he sat up tall like a big boy. Hello, what can I do for you today? A spider! Xavier's gaze instinctively went back to the piece they'd just finished on Derek. They immediately put together what was happening. That's a great idea. Let's get started. Nicholas nodded and then put all of his mental energy into holding still. You weren't sure how long the 6-year-old could keep that up before he started to squirm. While it was fun to watch Nicholas, you knew that your focus was better spent on deciding what design you were actually getting. You were next, so you gave the canvas another look. You picked out the... not the alien face. I feel like I gotta go the rainbow. If I'm being so honest, I think it's gotta be rainbow for me. I need more water. Woo! Okay, we're good. We're chillin'. Again, Xavier made quick work painting, and Nicholas was soon jumping out of his chair with a brand new spider adorning his cheek. He walked over and took his place in the chair. Can I get one too? Of course. The three brothers huddled together off to the side, proudly admiring and showing off each other's face paintings. Elizabeth crossed her arms, spotting you in the chair next. She'd been quietly hanging around the stall, attempting not to be too impatient. You were the last one left to go. I can start when you're ready. Right. You shifted your attention away from your group and instead stared directly into the artist's face. You liked their pink hair. It was pulled back and tucked under a uniform hat, and from this distance you realized that their eyes were more purplish than the brown color they looked when farther away. So what can I do for you? Could you paint me a rainbow? I can work with that. Hell yeah, rainbows during Pride, buddy! The artist dipped a clean brush into their starting color, and then they reached forward to begin drawing on your cheek. The paint felt cooler than you imagined. Trying not to move too much, the bristles lightly tickled as they glided across your skin. Stroke by stroke, Xavier started with the outer lines and then filled in the center of the drawing. And before you knew it, it was over. You eagerly checked yourself in the mirror on the counter and beamed. Thank you so much. You're welcome. You got up and rejoined the others. There was a delighted pep in your step as you pointed to the final result. Wow. Now that you and the Suarez brothers were happy with all of your face paintings, it was time to discover the next activity. Derek quickly paid for him and his brothers. You dug out some of your own money too, and then it was time to go. Have a good day. You too, Xavier. Your group gave one final round of thank yous to Xavier before moving on from the stall. The flow of the crowd brought you all drifting down the boardwalk. As you traveled further in, you actually spotted your parents. The Suarez boys jumped and waved, and their dad did exactly the same thing across the way. Next to him, Mrs. Suarez tried hiding her ear-to-ear grin with her hands. Your moms had their heads close together, laughing at Mr. Suarez's reaction. I feel like I'd wave more quietly. All the commotion had you blushing, and in comparison to the Suarez family, you were shyly waving. You simply hoped your moms could find you amongst the crowd. Knowing that you and Elizabeth had to be close by, your mom scanned over the unfamiliar people until they found you. They both waved back cheerfully. Then your parents continued on with their own adventure. Your group traveled further down the boardwalk. You browsed the long rows of shops, pointing out all the interesting things on sale. As the afternoon stretched on, your gang continued to enjoy the boardwalk. Elizabeth took long strides and led the pack, cutting her way through the crowd. Everyone was willing to follow her. The Suarez brothers were giving her some leeway since it was her first time there, and you were used to your older sister's attitude. She was making a beeline to the roller coaster, the single big kid ride of the boardwalk, and nothing was going to stand in her way. I feel like I would hang out with the boys. I feel like I'd hang back and be like, chill. Like, we relaxing. We're fine. Elizabeth was fine on her own, and you weren't just there for the rides. You wanted to spend time with your friend. Exactly. That part. Nicholas had stopped holding on to Derek, instead flitting around on his own. Derek continued to keep a sharp eye on him. He occasionally pursed his lips when Nicholas was on the cusp of wandering further away than safety allowed. You watched the little boy as well. His attention wasn't nearly as single-minded as Elizabeth's. He eventually started to lag, unable to keep up with Elizabeth's breakneck pace. Nicholas tottered at the end of the group, slowing his pace, falling behind, then bursting forward to catch back up. It happened on repeat. His eyelids drooped and his head bobbed forward. There was an expression of vacant determination on his face. It was a special kind of stubbornness only the youngest people in society could muster, the type where the concept of stopping wasn't just ignored, it flat out didn't exist in their minds. Luckily for Nicholas, he had a more self-aware big brother who could set limits for him. Hey, let's sit down for a second. What? It's a long walk, especially if you've got small legs. So you mean for you? That's right, I do need to take a break. Derek willingly accepted Elizabeth's shot at his stature. You could guess why pretty easily based on his leading tone. If Derek wanted to rest, Nicholas would want that too. Derek scanned the area and pointed out some tables in the distance. Elizabeth glanced at the path ahead once, but didn't argue about changing course. She picked an empty table that looked to be the cleanest of the selection. Everyone took a seat with a marked preference for sitting under the shaded half. You grabbed your water bottle and took a long and refreshing drink. It remained relatively cool on your tongue. Derek hefted Nicholas up on his lap. His brother wiggled slightly until he found a comfortable position. Blake has the right idea. It's water time. Nicholas gave no audible response. His eyes were completely closed. However, he did accept the water Derek placed into his hands. He sipped it sluggishly. Unfortunately, Nicholas tipped the water bottle upwards until it started to spill. Oops. Derek snatched the bottle back and chuckled. Nicholas opened his eyes slightly, barely perturbed by getting splashed. He rubbed his wet face on Derek's shirt and stayed resting against his chest. Derek patted his head. You had to admit, it was cute. Of course, I fucking love these two. They're so sweet. Like, these are just the little guys. Elizabeth and Jorge drank their water too, side-eyeing the scene but not saying a word. You should drink too, Derek. Come on, water time, you said it yourself. Thanks, I will. He pulled out his bottle with a smile and began to hydrate. Jorge finished his drink with a final chug. He inclined his head towards his two brothers. Nicholas is gonna fall asleep. Elizabeth twisted the cap back on her bottle. She was ready to go. What now? Nicholas let out a small, snuffly noise, a snore. Derek looked down at his clearly sleeping little brother, but it was no issue for Derek. He brushed it off as easily as Elizabeth's insult. It's cool. I'll find our parents and they can look after Nico while he naps. Mom and Dad won't mind taking him along since he's down for the count. They're probably sitting at one of the restaurants or browsing a store or something. Elizabeth nodded, glad it wouldn't be her problem. Jorge appeared more hesitant. Okay. He peeked at Elizabeth and then back to you. Derek smiled reassuringly and continued to pitch his plan. Plus, Elizabeth wanted to ride the roller coaster. I would have had to sit back with Nicholas anyway, since he's too short for it. It just makes sense for you three to do that while I'm dropping off Nicholas, so go get that ride. I'll catch up later. Jorge sighed. He was being left behind thanks to Nicholas, but was placated enough to not argue with his older brother. I'll stay with you two. Derek's brows furrowed at your request. It's just gonna be a chore. Fewer people doing it means more people actually having fun. Don't worry about me. I can be another set of eyes so we can find your parents faster. Ha, Derek, deal with it. I wanna help. Derek gave you another minute to change your mind. Nope, not changing my mind. Derek, I'm going with you. Tough shit. Fucking cope. When you didn't, he beamed brightly back at you. All right, you're with me. Derek continued, now full of eagerness. We have 2 teams and 2 missions. Pass Nicholas over to the parents and ride the roller coaster while that's happening. Let's go get it done. Blake and I will meet you at the ride so you can stay there if you finish first. The plan met everyone's approval. Elizabeth faced Derek. Well, thanks then. Her tone was lukewarm and could easily be mistaken as sarcastic. Derek shot you a look, not completely sure if Elizabeth was being serious or not. You held in a snort and discerningly nodded back at Derek, willing to play Elizabeth's interpreter. Derek relaxed and smiled at your sister. Bye. Bye. He winked at you while Elizabeth and Jorge began to get up and ready themselves. We'll see them soon. He carefully shifted Nicholas around from snoozing on his lap to buoyed in his arms. Gently, he eased onto his feet. You dealt with your water and sprung up to your feet. Elizabeth, you better... No, I would say that, but hopefully Elizabeth knows. Bye! Both Elizabeth and Jorge waved at you. Derek began to speed walk, moving quickly but smoothly not to jostle his brother too much. You had to keep up a good pace not to be left behind. There was no dawdling and no distractions, despite the best attempts of the boardwalk to draw its guests' attention with dazzling displays and enthusiastic employees. Derek might as well have been walking through an empty hall. You followed your friend down the line of stores and peeked into restaurant windows, but there was no sign of the parents. Your steps started to slow down as you checked another side of the massive boardwalk. This might take longer than I thought, but it'll be all right. He kept upbeat as he pressed his face into yet another window. Still nothing. Maybe Jorge and Elizabeth will have time to ride the roller coaster twice. It's not like that'd be horrible for them. Though, there his enthusiasm flagged a little. It does suck that you're stuck with this. Sorry. No. I'm not stuck anywhere. I'm spending time with you. Thanks. Oh, look at the little blushy boy. I love him. They're so sweet. Their friendship forever. He blushed and busied himself peering into the next restaurant. After a bit more searching, Derek spoke again. Do you like roller coasters, or are you scared of them? I personally am scared of them, so that's what I'm going to go with here. I understand. They go fast and make my stomach lurch sometimes. I like them, but probably not as much as your sister. I don't mind sitting out with you if Elizabeth and Jorge want to keep riding it when we get back. His response made you glad that you were friends. Actually, my family really likes going to amusement parks. I've been to this boardwalk probably more than 5 times, and we've gone to other places. Some have a lot more ride options. Oh, and water parks too. He continued chatting along about his favorite water park as you searched down the boardwalk. There are slides and lazy rivers and those giant buckets that dump water on you. That's amazing. Water parks are cool. It's nothing. He dismissed your amazement, flustered, and sped up his pace. And you have plenty of time to catch up. You can keep coming along with my family. You listened carefully as he recounted his past theme park excursions. He ranked them on attractions, wait time, and stuff to keep younger family members entertained. With the conversation light, you both laughed and smiled as you walked. Wait. He stopped in his tracks. Nicholas lightly thumped against his chest at the sudden loss of momentum. Derek readjusted him, and luckily Nicholas stayed asleep. I totally forgot we were supposed to be finding our parents. I wasn't even looking anywhere. He shook his head to refocus. Yeah, we got a little distracted. With that reminder, you both continued searching. Sleeping Beauty occasionally let out a snore, but other than that, Nicholas didn't contribute to the quest. You wandered all around the boardwalk, eyes peeled for any sign of your parents. The sky turned golden as the sun began to disappear under the horizon. You glanced out to the sea, and it looked as if the ocean was swallowing the day. Lights began to click on, and the already shiny buildings of the boardwalk were set aglow. You took a moment to absorb the sunset. It was nice to take a breath and ignore the noisy backdrop. It was then that you finally got an answer to your mystery. No wonder you hadn't noticed before. Derek, look over there. Derek took a gander at your direction. He raised his eyebrows. He squinted into the distance before he dropped his jaw. As soon as he understood, he blurted out in shock. They rented bikes? Across the way, pedaling along, the two pairs of parents were having a lovely double date. Aww, that's so cute. They were far enough away that you couldn't see much more than their helmets, but you could tell that Mom was laughing about something with her head thrown back. That explains that. He muttered under his breath in frustration. He gritted his teeth as the annoyance drained. The cold truth hit him and he whispered, defeated. They can't take Nicholas on a bike. Derek shrunk in on himself. He's their kid. They have to take them. Derek squirmed uncomfortably, not disagreeing with you, but not happy with the answer. He grimaced at the distance. The parents were blissfully unaware that you were even there. Finally, he let out a tired breath that was dangerously close to a sigh. His shoulders drooped enough to visibly lower Nicholas. I can't do that. I can't give him to them. Derek, your parents would figure something out. Derek frowned, his troubles plain on his face. But not one to keep the mood down, Derek tried to shake it off. A soft smile pulled at his face. He faced the sun and spoke into the slowly disappearing light. It's just one of those things. It happens. Nicholas twitched in his deep sleep and Derek pulled him closer. Don't worry, I've got a plan. You waited for him to continue. With every word, more confidence filled his demeanor. We should go see Elizabeth and Jorge. They must be going crazy, wondering where we are. Agreed, but still concerned. I don't think Derek's being honest with himself about how he's feeling. Was it really okay? Sure, going back to the rest of the group made sense. What else could you do if Derek refused to approach his parents? But you still hadn't solved the Nicholas problem. You worried that this wasn't going to turn out the best for your friend. All right. You backtracked to the roller coaster. Derek was shuffling behind you. He'd slowed down from his bustling pace earlier. He had to be tired. Beside the sign that let you measure if you were tall enough to ride the roller coaster, Elizabeth stood with folded arms and Jorge waved. Hi, we're here. Elizabeth and Jorge walked over and met you halfway. Hey. He scuffed one of his shoes on the ground. He felt the weight of Elizabeth's gaze and let out a nervous chuckle. He shrugged as if to say, yeah, the parents' plan didn't work out. Sorry for taking so long. There was sort of a problem. Duh. Nicholas snuffled into Derek's shirt as he snored. Before she or Jorge could ask for more details, Derek jumped in with the other idea he'd hinted at. I'm gonna hold Nicholas until it's time to go home. The rest of you can keep having fun. Go wherever you want. Jorge uncomfortably pulled at his shirt, stretching the fabric at its seams. I don't want to go. I want to help. He visibly felt bad about all of this being put on Derek. You got the impression that if Jorge was a little bigger, that he'd offer to take a turn holding his baby brother instead. No, it's okay. I'll be fine. You really shouldn't waste all your time standing around with me. Plus, then who would help Elizabeth and Blake around the boardwalk? They haven't been here before. You know this place and can make sure they don't get lost or don't miss the good parts. Jorge turned to you and Elizabeth, but hesitated with his answer. It would help me to know we didn't send them off alone. They're our guests, right? Okay. Poor Jorge clearly wants to help, and I feel... Oh, it's such a mess. It's such a mess with the smallest one. I love Nicholas, but oof, poor Derek. Thanks, Jorge. Derek leaned closer to Elizabeth and whispered, I don't want Jorge to miss out on the boardwalk 'cause of Nicholas or 'cause of me. Please go take him and have some fun. Elizabeth and Derek made eye contact, and for all you could figure, they had some sort of eldest sibling telepathy going on. That was the only way you could explain it, because rather than arguing, she agreed to work with Derek. I'll do it. Elizabeth then pressed her lips together and considered you. She snorted and then lightly flicked your nose. But I don't need Blake with me. Jorge isn't a pain. Derek's brows creased, not expecting that. Yeah, I'll stay with Derek. I thought so. Blake. Derek's voice was strangled and hushed. You don't have to do that. What about you? Why does it have to be just you? You could have suggested we take turns watching Nicholas. Or you could have even let Nicholas's real parents take care of him. Derek shook his head and you felt your stubbornness spark. It's fine. Someone's got to be here for Nicholas, and it's easiest if I do it. That's all. Derek, would you stop? Enough. Well, now it's going to be easiest if we do it together. Jorge, show me something interesting. Jorge gulped but nodded. His gaze bounced between Elizabeth and your standoff with Derek, and he wisely decided to take his leave. He led Elizabeth away, passing by assorted stalls. He seemed to have an idea of where he was going, so you figured he and your sister would probably have a good time. Now back to this dude. Back to this boy right now who's refusing any fucking help. Derek shifted his weight from foot to foot, bouncing around like the floor was on fire. It got more panicked the further away your sister and his brother got without you. Blake, you have to go. Like hell I have to go, what you mean? I'm the one who decided not to give him to our parents. It's not your fault, it's mine. You need to go have fun. You telling me I need fun kind of takes the fun out of it. When the other two were completely out of sight, Derek stopped his frantic movement, having spent all his excess nervous energy. You met his gaze head on, staring at the friend who simply couldn't help himself from being helpful. His face changed into something tense and small. You wondered how many times he did this, took on all the responsibility so that others didn't have to be bothered. It didn't seem like he was called out on it much. Slowly, he smiled. His grin was tender enough to be genuine. Well then, if you're gonna be here anyways, we don't have to make ourselves miserable. Yeah, I'm calling you the fuck out, dude. You need to stop. Stop being such a goddamn delight and putting everyone else before you. It's pissing me off. Be selfish for once in your life, okay? It's you and me, and well, Nicholas time. Yeah. Alrighty. He lifted Nicholas higher and stood tall, ready to take on the world. Then his knees buckled and he blushed. Can we sit down somewhere? Yeah, that's probably a good idea. After spending all that time searching high and low, both of you needed a break. You both dragged yourselves over to a nearby bench. It was thankfully empty and away from the crowd. Derek took a heavy seat and exhaled deeply. He kept Nicholas clutched closely to his chest. It was a familiar motion, one that Derek must have done hundreds of times before. I admire how responsible you are, because here's the thing. He's not trying to be... I think my character could do with being a little more responsible, and I think Derek could do better being a little less responsible. Like, Derek needs to remember he's a kid, and that's like a common theme throughout this, is Derek forgets that he himself is still a kid. He might be the oldest, but he's the oldest kid, and that's what he needs to remember. After you both had settled, Derek carefully reached into his pocket. He struggled to dig around to find what he was searching for. Aha! He pulled out his special snack baggie in triumph. It was still completely full, untouched from this morning. Derek tried to pick out some morsels from the bag, but it was even harder to keep Nicholas from flopping over. Let me help. Derek flushed at your offer and became self-conscious over the fact that you noticed his difficulty. Dude, don't be embarrassed about being human. You don't have 8 arms. It's fine that you need help. Thanks. Despite his embarrassment, he passed the snacks to you. You took the bag and he steadied his hold on Nicholas. Oh, I just need the granola chunks. You can leave the other stuff in there. Is that your favorite? Yeah, but no. How you gonna yes but no me, Derek? It can't be both. Either the granola chunks are your favorite or they're not. What game are you playing with me right now? For real. You squinted at him in confusion. He laughed cheekily, having expected your reaction. It's my favorite snack in the bag, but that's not the reason I want it. The other stuff isn't for me. Derek, I swear to Lucifer. There's a handful of the cereal Nicholas secretly likes. That way he can have something that's not just candies and cookies. I brought the walnuts for Jorge in case we were out too long and he got hungry, and... He dropped his gaze from you shyly. The peanuts are for you, because maybe you'd get hungry too. Derek, are you seriously telling me that in your own personalized snack bag, only 25% of the snacks inside is actually for you? Because I could easily kind of fight you a little bit right now. That was your snack bag, not packed for everybody else. They had their own snack bags. They don't need more snacks. What are you doing, my guy? I adore Derek, but if I could fight a fucking visual novel character, I would right now, because how dare? That's 4 handfuls. Yeah, 4 handfuls, and only one for you in your own ding-dang snack bag. Ah, Derek. You're infuriatingly considerate, and I love and hate you for it. Don't be your own ding-dang downfall, please. Literally. You shouldn't use your snack bag for other people. What if he got hungry? Derek prepared for everyone but himself. If he really thought that everyone else wouldn't have enough, maybe his parents should have let them bring along bigger bags. It's nothing. He tried to reassure you and brush off your concern. To him, it wasn't a big deal. Yeah, of course it's not a big deal to you. You do this shit all the time. You're used to putting yourself last. I don't fucking like it. Do you want any peanuts? You can take it. I still have... You should eat it. It's your special snack bag. Derek, stop. Full stop. I feel like I need to host a goddamn intervention here. Like, you should eat it. It's your snack bag. All right, you can hand it over. He chuckled and you fished out some granola and peanuts. Derek held out his hand and you carefully dropped the snacks into his palm. Thanks. Yeah, no problem. He is the most considerate, but do you know how far you have to go into considerate for it to be infuriating? Because it's a lot. You have to go very, very over that line for it to be a problem for me. He popped one of the tiny oat clusters into his mouth and started chewing. Yeah, eat and share with Derek, because how dare you not pack more goodies for yourself? Ah! You found your baggie and unzipped it. You started snacking along with Derek. Every so often, you'd pluck out some more granola from Derek's bag and pass it over between bites. Want some? You held out your baggie in place where you could just pour it out for Derek if he said yes. His eyes lit up in amusement as he considered your snacks. But he winked at you, a clear sign of the clownery to come. Derek, so help me if you turn down my snacks. When you packed more for everybody else, Water break before I deal with Derek's foolishness, because so help me. I'ma fight him a little bit. Okay, Derek, I'm gonna try and not rip your head off here, but you need to, not do whatever you're about to do, because I have a feeling your response is gonna irk me to my core. No, those are your snacks, so you gotta eat them. Eat them. You laughed. Turnabout was fair play. You'd refused him, so he'd refused you. That's different, though. I didn't pack snacks for everybody else. Both of you leisurely enjoyed the time. The bench was comfortable, the food delicious, and the scenery was busy enough. There was always something to watch. The munching and high-pitched snoring served as the only sounds between you for a while. You passed Derek the last cluster of granola. You had to really try to get it out of the bag around all the cereal and walnut chunks. He accepted it with great enthusiasm, then took his final bites. He swallowed, satisfied. He absent-mindedly patted Nicholas's head as he peered up and down the street. Something caught his eye, and he lit up. You know, I was so focused before, I kind of forgot where we were. This is still the boardwalk. He was as excited as he had been towards the beginning of the day. Want to walk around? There's a lot of interesting stuff here, even if we're only looking. Yeah, that sounds nice. Derek gave you a thumbs up and then hummed at Nicholas. Can you help me move him to my back? That'll be easier for a long haul. You stood up to help. It took both of you fumbling around, but with effort you were able to get the little boy comfortably on Derek's back. Then you left the bench behind to explore the bustling waterfront park. Without consciously deciding to, you gravitated to the edge of the path closest to the sea. You studied the beautiful ocean, your breath almost taken away by how the water sparkled under the last flickers of sunlight. The evening remained pleasantly warm despite the encroaching darkness. Your skin felt taut under your face paint. The paint had started to crack after its long exposure to the elements. Is it normal for Nicholas to fall asleep like this? Kind of. Sometimes something is so exciting that Nicholas bounces off the walls just by imagining it. By the time he actually gets there, he's already burnt himself out. Yeah, that sounds about right for a 6-year-old. I'm pretty sure Nico didn't sleep at all last night because he knew today was gonna be boardwalk day. That is really cute, honestly. Derek grinned and pressed his cheek into Nico's. Your parents should give you a raise, for real. Derek's out here being like a mini third fucking parent. Ha, I don't think it works like that, but it would be cool if they did. Walking down the boardwalk was peaceful. The conversation was easy with the occasional giggle. Other groups of people passed by. Couples, young friend groups, and families with children all bustled about. You caught slivers of conversations ranging from mundane to philosophical. Derek glanced at the faces around him and grinned to himself. It kind of feels like we're parents and this is our kid. He twisted around to show you Nicholas with amusement. Not. Some of these are wild. Not the, oh yeah, our next trip should be to a wedding chapel. I feel like Derek would lose his mind. You're right. He readjusted his grip on his brother with a chuckle. Derek had a mischievous idea. He deepened his voice, pretending to be an adult. Yes, here we are on a delightful little walk. I have a son and a job, and I do taxes every quarter. Derek's fucking wild. I love him. You dissolved into a peal of laughter. He bowed his head bashfully. As he led you down the boardwalk, you noticed a new skip in his step. Hey, I have an idea. Let's ride the Ferris wheel. We've officially given up on getting our parents, and even Nico can do that. Yeah. Derek let out a whoop and turned around like it was a little happy dance. You laughed, charmed by his enthusiasm. You're gonna wake Nicholas if you keep that up. Even if I did, we'd drag him to the wheel anyways. That'd rock him back to sleep. You smirked. Derek had an answer for everything. You both eagerly made your way through the crowd to get in line for the one ride that was an option for you. Derek cautiously weaved past people, making sure no one accidentally bumped into Nicholas on the way. The line was short, and it didn't take long for you to start boarding the ride. Aw, stop. It's so cute with the clouds and the sky and I'm in love with the art in this goddamn game. The art style is just, chef's kiss. You piled into the cabin, and Derek placed Nicholas in the corner of the metal bench. He sat next to him. Nicholas snuffled when he was jostled, but didn't wake. Derek wrapped his arms around him to secure him from falling forward. Nicholas unconsciously leaned his head over to rest on him. You rested on the bench across from them, eye to eye with Derek. It felt sturdy under you. Derek's grin widened and he tapped his toes together as he waited for the ride to start. And it did. The carriage car rocked forward. Slowly, you ascended into the sky. You could see the entire expanse of the boardwalk from the cabin. It was an amazing sight. From this height, the stalls and decorations looked like a magical land of toys. You glanced at Derek, curious if he was enjoying the view too. The sun had continued to sink as the Ferris wheel rose, and the light that reached inside the cabin through the little window was low. Sharp-edged shadows cut across Derek's body. He'd stopped shuffling his feet and switched to tapping his fingers against the top of his knee in a jittery, uneven beat. With Nicholas still sound asleep, it felt like you were alone with Derek. In the small space and high in the air, with no one else anywhere around, you made one more attempt to get Derek to be open with you. If he wouldn't do it now, then when would he? Hey, I still want to talk about what's been happening. You began to list your points of concern, and the whole thing sounded even more unreasonable when said in a single sentence. You got the face paint Nicholas wanted. You picked out snacks for other people. You gave up your own chance to have fun today so our parents could go on a bike ride. Why don't you do things for yourself? He shrunk under the accusation like the walls were bending in on him. Well, it's not like I can't ever do things for me. I do sometimes. You weren't convinced and spelled that out with the furrow of your brow and the tight line of your mouth. Derek acted the scolded child and hung his head in shame. But he felt compelled to fill the uncomfortable silence your reaction had left. It's easier to do things for other people than try to fight for something just for me, and that makes everything easier for other people too. You almost spoke out in his defense to declare that he should stand up for what he needed, but you held back. Derek was finally expressing himself, and you didn't want to interrupt. He rambled on, trying to sort out his thoughts and arrange the words in a way that made sense to both you and himself. I like thinking about the people I love. I really seriously do like doing stuff that makes them happy. I don't want to have to stop doing any of that. Derek tightened his hands into fists. His words were earnest, and he directed them straight towards you with unwavering eye contact. I mean it, even though it's annoying sometimes. Annoying for me and whoever tries to stick with me. However, as true as it was, his resoluteness fizzled out almost immediately. Derek timidly sunk down in his seat. He brushed his little brother's bangs away from his closed eyes. It was a nervous, momentary distraction. Nicholas offered him some emotional support just by being there. When Derek spoke again, it was in a tiny voice. But maybe part of me is sort of hoping that instead of having to do more for myself and less for others, somebody would try to do things for me too. Then it'd be even. Stop, I love him. I want to cry at the fact that he's like, well, if I do things for everybody else and then someone does the same thing for me, then like all is right with the world and it'll be balanced. And he's not even wrong though. Like, holy crap, he should have someone doing that for him. And I'm mad that no one else is stepping in to do it. They're just kind of letting him put himself last and like not giving it any consideration. Because unfortunately, the truth of it is, not everyone thinks like Derek. So many people are selfish in the world, so while he's putting everyone above himself, he's hoping someone will do the same. Oh, my heart, this poor sweet little bean. He's only 13. He shouldn't have to be worried like this. Derek shifted shyly. His head was still low, but his gaze shifted up to you. It's kind of like a dream or something that I've got. And if I'm not doing that for anyone else, how am I gonna find someone who will do it for me? I can't ask for stuff that not even I'd want to give. Your eyebrows shot up, but the rest of your body froze in place. Derek turned his face towards the window. It wasn't enough to cover the way his cheeks had reddened. My family cares about me, obviously, but a lot of the time that's the thing I need help with. With a laugh, Derek liberally tousled the hair of the beloved pain in his side who laid there. The youngest brother remained blissfully unaware of the trouble he caused. The humor in his tone left Derek as quickly as it appeared. He couldn't get away from how serious the topic was, or how much it truly meant to him. It'd be cool to have somebody who was on my side and who liked me 'cause of me, not because they're family and are supposed to love me. For a single instant his eyes met yours, but then he instantly focused on the world outside the scuffed, clouded window of the old Ferris wheel. You could see a lopsided grin reflected in the glass. Don't tell my bros I imagined some pretty dumb things. It's not dumb. It's normal and nice, but also like, I want to say like all of the things because poor Derek. Derek be getting the short end of the stick and just kind of doing it with a smile. You do have that. I'm here for whenever you need it. Ah, thanks. The foggy face you could make out in the window pane trembled. He wasn't ready to show it directly, but you were glad you still got a glimpse of it. He grasped the top of one knee and took in a deep breath through his nose. When he exhaled, he carefully laid out a few more words for consideration. Hey Blake, is there somebody that you think? Without thinking, you leaned forward towards him. You were hanging on his words like the cabin you were seated in was suspended from the wheel. But he never placed the last part. Never mind, forget it. You can ask me anything if you want to. Don't worry about that, but thanks, you're great. It was just this idea I've been kicking around, but I should probably think about it a little more. A lot more. Besides, Derek shrugged an arm and cocked his head down to the extra bit of company who was still gently snoring. It's kinda awkward to talk about all of this personal stuff with my baby brother right here, even if he is asleep. You know what? Fair enough. You know what? You ask me your question whenever you're ready to ask me your question, okay? He chuckled good-naturedly and moving his hand to scratch behind his ear. Maybe I can try again later. The back of his foot knocked against the lower wall of the outcropping metal seat on repeat. It sounded the end of the conversation, but that didn't mean nothing else was on his mind. Derek was always considering something, and most of the time it was other people. Things someone else might have missed or forgotten weren't taken for granted by him. Thanks for helping with the snacks before. That piece of appreciation was given easily. The next, though, was far meeker. And thanks for coming with me. Anytime, Derek, for real. This time, Derek shared his bright and bashful face directly with you. You could always count on him, that was a certainty, and Derek knew that the sentiment was mutual. You would look out for him whether he did for himself or not, whether he asked you to or not, and whether he wanted you to or not. That was just as sure. Not much more was said before the ride came to its steady, inevitable end. You disembarked from the cabin with Nicholas securely in Derek's arms. He strolled from the exit to the nearest stall to ask the employee what time it was. 8 p.m. was quickly approaching. We better go to the meetup place. Can you help me get Nico on my back again? How about I carry him now? Oh. Instinctively, Derek pulled back. He clung tighter to his youngest brother, keeping the weight of that burden squarely on himself. You waited, calm and stable. Ultimately, the tension in his face and the hesitancy in his heart faded, and he accepted your offer graciously. That'd actually be great. Thanks, Blake. Derek shifted his grip on Nicholas before he propped the small boy over your shoulders. You tucked your elbows around Nico's knees and hunched over so he wouldn't slip off. Nicholas draped heavily on your back like a fluffy, car-patterned cape. He really wasn't that heavy, but you could easily imagine how carrying the extra load could get tiresome after a while. Derek definitely needed a break. Hooray for him accepted my help. I fucking love it. I'm so here for helping Derek. Let me be there for you like you're there for everyone else. Perfect. Together you wandered across the path. The people surrounding you were full of enthusiasm, bustling from ride to ride and store to store, but a quiet peace had settled between you and Derek. Your day at the boardwalk was already coming to an end. Oh, it's so pretty at night. God, it makes me want to go to like an actual amusement park. The sky had gone completely dark by the time you reached the meeting spot, but the world around you was still awash with light. Street lamps bore down on you while spotlights shot upwards to illuminate the biggest rides. You and Derek huddled at the side of the path. You wanted to stay out of the way of other visitors who were trickling off to the parking lot and the ones who were rushing the opposite way for a last-minute excursion on the boardwalk. You hoped the strangers enjoyed themselves, but for you and Derek, plus the sleeping Nicholas, there was nowhere to go. At least, not until you caught sight of your currently missing family members. We beat them. I'm not surprised. You used the break as an opportunity to readjust Nicholas. He'd started to slide a bit during the trip over. Since there were only 2 awake members of your group, you both wordlessly kept your eyes peeled. Every figure approaching in the distance was scrutinized, and then disregarded as just another stranger. The process repeated for a few minutes, but eventually the 2 shadowed forms coming down the path stepped under a light, and you immediately recognized them. Jorge, Elizabeth! Derek jumped and waved his hands over his head. He was entirely free to draw attention to himself that way, thanks to you taking over piggybacking Nicholas. Even on the other end of the boardwalk, you could tell Elizabeth was smirking. When Derek's brother and your sister rejoined you in front of the first stall, you were proven right. She definitely had a leering smirk. Excuse me, Elizabeth, when the fuck did that happen? Call out right now. It's very cute that you're taking a turn with the precious baby. Ha! Derek barked out a laugh. Elizabeth's smile wasn't the only notable thing on her face, and even Derek wasn't polite enough to let her get away with it. Maybe, but what's that on your forehead? Thank you, Derek. Someone had to say it. The oldest kid hadn't returned exactly the same way you'd left her. She now had a bright white golf ball emblazed on her skin with non-toxic, water-soluble paint. I like your new look. After just a small huff, Elizabeth plainly laid out her case. Jorge and I talked a little about sports we liked. When I told him I did golf, he suggested I get face paint of that. I did, and it was fun. Her chin was high and she spoke with defiance. Elizabeth absolutely refused to be embarrassed by her change of mind. You know what? Honestly kinda love that for her though. Jorge stood at your sister's side and proudly took credit for the accomplishment. She didn't want to do it before because she was just being an Eliza brat. Huh? Better than being a Borhe. Jorge and Elizabeth chuckled at the quips. Apparently they had unique nicknames for one another now. It left Derek nearly speechless. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't expecting these two to get along that well. Borhe? Eliza Brat? Okay, fair enough, I guess. Wow. Clearly, you and Derek weren't the only ones who went through a bonding experience this evening. I'm glad you had fun. What else did you think would happen? You had a lot of unfortunate scenarios you could have imagined, but someone beat you to the punch when it came to saying it out loud. That you'd act too cool for everything and Jorge would sit around sad all day? Well, that's rude and it didn't happen. And that's why we're glad. Light-hearted laughter drifted around the group. Whether you were divided up or all together, the Suarez and Thrasher kids enjoyed each other's company. Your sister then exhaled calmly and followed it with a sage nod. I'll take Nicholas now. Oh. Whether Derek was going to agree or disagree with the offer, you didn't know, but Elizabeth didn't give him a chance. She wasn't suggesting what he thought she was. We've got like 10 or 15 minutes left. The two of you should use it. What? You want us to leave him with you? Uh-huh. Derek took a hesitant step back and turned his face away. His expression tensed the same way it had when he first realized Nico was going to be asleep for the rest of the trip. Nicholas is going to be mad if I'm not there. The resistance was a weak mumble, and his middle brother spoke with much more boldness. Nicholas isn't gonna know, and what he doesn't know won't kill him. Jorge. Derek was at a loss on where that had come from. You hadn't expected it either. Jorge was never the rule bender. You must have missed even more than you thought during his time with Elizabeth. Derek, let's go for it. See, even your darling Blake wants you to stop being such a goody two-shoes for a single second. Go have fun for Pete's sake. Yeah, hurry. You have to do stuff at the boardwalk while we're at the boardwalk. He shyly scuffed his sneaker on the ground with a doe-eyed expression that was more expected from Nicholas. It was exceedingly rare for anyone to tell Derek what the plan was. He was used to coming up with all the ideas and taking charge. Derek glanced at you. It was impossible not to smile at him. All right, I'll do it. Me too. Finally. There was a quick passing of the buck as Elizabeth took Nicholas into her hands. She carefully positioned his head against her shoulder and cradled his legs under her forearms. Derek found the hold satisfactory and entrusted his youngest brother to her the same way he'd let her borrow the responsibility of watching out for Jorge. No time was wasted. You shot off down the boardwalk one more time. The flow of traffic had shifted even more from when you started waiting, with everyone except for you moving towards the exit. You pushed against the tide into the heart of the park, sprinting hand in hand 1,000%. The two of you had reached for the other on instinct in the heat of the chase, neither wanting to be separated in the crowd and both yearning to be as close as possible. Your feet and heart were beating really hard. Derek shouted over the sound in a breathless, thrilled voice. The lines are all gonna be short this late, but I don't think we can do two. Which one do you want to do? or we don't have to go on a ride at all. I want to do what you want to do. Oh, could we do the roller coaster? Definitely. Alright. The joy in his cheer betrayed how disappointed he must have really been to miss out on the roller coaster before. He had put on a brave face before, and in the end had the chance to get his due reward. You would make certain that he got on that ride. You and Derek sped straight to your goal. You couldn't help but tilt your head back every so often as the roller coaster loomed closer. As Derek had theorized, the line wasn't even half the length it was for most of the day. It only took a few minutes before you were on the platform and awaiting your ride. You jumped into the cart along with Derek and pulled the safety bar down in front of you. He was bursting with anticipation, so the restraints were especially useful. A clicking sound like the winding up of a clock chimed out, and the ride began its gradual climb upward. It reached the summit, and after an appropriately stomach-tightening pause, it rolled over the edge. Cool summer air rushed over your face and whipped your hair as you descended at breakneck speed. Derek threw his arms into the air as he squealed in delight. Woo! You were jostled in your seat, vibrating with the motion of the coaster. Derek and you took turns knocking into the other around every bend. When you came to a jarring stop back at the station, you lifted off the restraint together and made your exit down the other side of the ride. Derek ruffled his hands through his hair to straighten out his characteristic spikes. He was absolutely beaming on the way out. Derek stared at the sparkling stars above the glitz and clamor of the boardwalk. There was a peace between you that hadn't been there at any other moment during your trip. Hey. His eyes had stolen the shine from the cosmos when he placed his gaze back on you. It was way too awkward to talk about this before with my little brother right there, but I just want to say I really like hanging out with you, Blake. I love my brothers and parents a ton, and my other friends are great too, but when I have to pick someone to team up with, I think about you. Stop, he's adorable. I just want to squeeze him. He shrugged his shoulders with a shy grin. Derek was someone you could count on for honesty, but sometimes it still surprised you what he was capable of. I think of you too. Oh, cool. There was no haste or worry of separation, but Derek's hand still found its way around yours. You threaded your fingers together with his. The soft touch squeezed at your heart even more than your hand. Getting the chance to spend some time with truly just the two of you was more than you could have hoped for. You owed Elizabeth one. Despite taking an entire extra jaunt around the boardwalk, you still arrived at the entrance before your parents. However, there had been a shift in the group. Nicholas was awake. Oh boy. As soon as Derek noticed the small third figure standing by Elizabeth and Jorge, he started like he was hit by a bolt. You felt him squeeze his fingers around your hand in his stunned state. He made a break for his siblings, bringing you along with him. The motion was not exactly subtle, and it caught the attention of the boy in question. He let out a shout when he saw your rapid approach. Well, technically it wasn't your arrival that had an impact. Derek's back! Nicholas sprinted away from the meeting spot, not willing to wait a single second for the reunion. He crashed into Derek, wrapping his arms around his brother's thighs and sticking his head in the space between Derek's legs. Oof. it was powerful enough to knock Derek off balance. He had to release your hand so he could swing his arms out to the side to stop his wobbling. Once he was sure he wasn't going to topple over, Derek bent down and scooped up his hanger-on. Seeing Derek carrying Nicholas felt extremely familiar by this point, considering that had been the case for the entire afternoon. But Derek wasn't sick of it yet. He could handle it for a little longer. Derek nudged his head towards the other two members of your party, encouraging you to come. Together, you and Derek walked the rest of the way to the boardwalk entrance, while Nicholas clung onto Derek the whole way. Jorge waved you over. "Welcome back." "Hey." And the moment you were in whispering distance, you were greeted by a hushed message from your own big sibling. "Good work." She put a finger to her cheek and smirked suggestively. It confused you for a second before you realized she had seen you holding hands even from a distance. "Damn, Elizabeth, be cool!" "Goddamn." Derek slowly kneeled to let Nicholas get down. The little boy stood on his own 2 feet, but his 2 hands didn't detach. They only grasped the hem of Derek's jersey instead. While brushing his brother's messy hair, Derek glanced up at Nico's temporary babysitters. He stared at them questioningly. What happened was the obvious unspoken question. "He's only been up for a few minutes. And he was really grumpy at first 'cause you weren't there, but we got him talking about the dream adventure he had when he was sleeping to keep him busy, and that worked. It was really funny, and Nico had a good time too." Jorge beamed with pride at the success, and you noticed how much closer he stood to Elizabeth. Your sister accepted his company just as welcomingly. They were their own partners in crime for the day. I'm basically positive that after about 5 seconds, he stopped telling us his actual dreams and was making it all up, but it was cute. Derek blinked at the two as if he had witnessed a miracle. It kind of was, in a small way. He was able to pass the mantle of responsibility, and everything turned out fine. "See, Derek, my dude, you're good. We're gonna take another water break real fast, 'cause, whoo." Between the heat and all the reading, I'm kind of dying over here. But it's okay, we venture on. Let's go. However, Elizabeth and Jorge wouldn't be replacing Derek anytime soon, or likely ever. Nicholas may have behaved for a bit, but now that his biggest brother was here, the young lad wanted to be taken care of. His gaze dropped to the ground as he pulled at the end of Derek's shirt. "Derek, my tummy hurts. I want ice cream." "No ice cream, Nico. That's not going to help your stomach." "But you can have some of my snacks. I saved you part of it." Derek's tone really sold the idea. It was full of appeal from the fact that it was his snacks. He could hype up a product better than any of the employees running games on the boardwalk. Nicholas brightened immediately. He clasped his own collar and leaned his head all the way back to look up at his brother's face where he stood against Derek's legs. He wasn't kept waiting long. Derek pulled the baggie out of his pocket and sifted through the mix of walnuts and cereal to pick out the treat especially chosen for Nico. Once he'd collected a small handful, he passed it over to Nicholas, carefully dropping the round cereal puffs one by one. In Nicholas's tiny palm, the amount was almost overflowing. Nicholas gratefully received the offering. He shoved the whole thing into his face and ate directly out of his hand. It reminded you of feeding oats to a pony, except in this case, Nicholas was both the feeder and the fed. Derek nodded in satisfaction and rolled the bag over in his palm. Jorge, these are for you. He gathered the last wayward pieces of cereal and then offered the well-worn bag of nothing but walnuts to the middle child. It's been a really long day and there's still the ride back. You should eat something. Jorge didn't argue with that. He gladly accepted his brother's thoughtful gesture. Thanks. Jorge plucked out just one from the pack, the heartiest-looking nut in the bunch, and took a bite out of it. His gaze slowly shifted towards Elizabeth, or Eliza Bratt as Jorge knew her, as he swallowed his snack. Then he asked a question. Do you want any? You know what? I would. Thanks. Elizabeth was the third person who took a turn opening a hand to receive a snack. Jorge shook a few of the nuts into her awaiting palm. Derek, you and Blake can have some too. Nicholas's fingers remained pushed against his mouth, but his distinct chomping stopped. He spoke muffled words filtered through a handful of half-crushed cereal. I can share too. He stuck his sticky palm upward towards Derek's face instead of his own. The gesture had crumbs cascading down his shirt. Nico couldn't reach high enough to get it all the way to his brother's mouth. Derek shook with giggles and poked Nicholas's wrist to nudge the pile of soggy cereal away. He had to take a second to breathe before he could explain himself. I've got some of the cereal right here. That'll be from you. Thanks, Nicholas. I'm gonna eat it. That logic seemed sound to Nicholas, or maybe just seeing his brother smile made Nicholas smile too. Either way, he accepted that not taking more of the cereal counted as him sharing. But he wasn't done. Nicholas turned around on a dime, arms still outstretched, and positioned his hand towards you. Amazingly, he wanted to share with someone other than Derek. Stop! It's so cute! I love him! Nicholas is my favorite! You kiddos are all way too nice. Absolutely cooed at his sweetness. I love Nicholas. He's just a little guy. You knew he was trying to be nice, and that was adorable. Before Nicholas could start flinging bits of cereal at you in his eagerness to share, a warm voice boomed above the din of the busy boardwalk. Good evening, family and friends. It was Mr. Suarez, and not only him, you spotted all four of the parents weaving their way through the crowd. We're here. The sight of his mommy and daddy made Nicholas forget all about feeding you his pre-chewed snack. He smashed the remaining cereal into his mouth so he could use both his hands to wave at his parents. Dad! Mom! Derek called back with equal excitement. The parents picked up the pace and came to gather around their children. Greetings were shared between adults and kids. Immediately, Ma noted the face paint that was now adorning your group. You all look wonderful, so creative. Nicholas forced himself to swallow the mouthful. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. He sucked in a huge breath, pointing to his cheek, and screeched. Ah, that's a spider! There's a spider! Oh no, you're right, it's a spider. My goodness, it's terrifying. Don't make any quick movements, kiddo. It might bite you. Yes, wait there. I will help you, son. Mr. Suarez gave Nico's chubby cheek a pinch to get rid of the dangerous arachnid. He retracted his hand in shock when he realized it was in fact only paint. Nicholas snickered gleefully at the hubbub among the grown-ups. Mission accomplished. Look at his little face. This little boy loves chaos, and it's so cute. Mrs. Suarez then clasped her hands together and changed the topic. Well, everyone, I'm sorry you beat us here. Hopefully you weren't waiting too long. Nah, it was fine. I appreciate you waiting here for us. We went on a very lovely bike ride across the boardwalk. Really? You were out there pedaling around on bikes? Mm-hmm. Elizabeth's and Jorge's faces of genuine surprise at the news helped to distract from the awkward knowing glances you shared with Derek. Returning them was a real hassle. That's why we got here late. Definitely worth it, though. It was, and did you children have a good day? Nicholas threw his hands in the air to answer with full force. Yeah. Derek softly patted his littlest brother's head. His voice was much quieter and distinctly relieved. Yeah. You, Jorge, and Elizabeth nodded and offered your own points of agreement. It might not have gone as you had imagined, but none of you would consider it a waste of time. It was an experience worth having. That's great. I'm sure you made the most of what you had, but we better get going. It is very late. Perhaps we should pick dinner up on the way home. Absolutely. It's been hours since we left, and Nicholas can always sleep in the car since we won't be home before bedtime either way. All of the kids except for Nicholas had their face go completely flat, and Elizabeth snorted. Mrs. Suarez didn't miss that reaction. She raised a brow. Derek straightened the bands on his wrist and broke the news to his mom. There was a glint of amusement in his eyes. Sorry, Mom, I don't think that's gonna happen. Nicholas remained oblivious to the discussion going on about him. He was leaping and bounding from board to board, completely refreshed. His mother frowned. It was obvious to her what had occurred. Mr. Suarez was unflustered. He shared some dignified optimism. Well then, he'll be up to keep us company. True, we'll all be together. Those words reached the small ears of the youngest person there. Nicholas held on to Derek's abdomen, liking the sound of that promise. His older brother looked down at him warmly. Glad to have you back, Nico. And Jorge, you're such a reliable bro. He wrapped one arm around Nicholas and reached over to pull his other brother into a hug. Jorge welcomed and reciprocated the embrace. The Suarez trio snuggled together in a tight squeeze, and their flaking face paint rubbed off on each other. Your gaze wandered from the public display of affection and went to your older sister. Elizabeth was definitely not a hugger, but you whispered your own siblingly appreciation for her. Thanks for the help before. She gave a smug flip of her hair. Forget it, I owed you one after your grand stunt for me on Daddy Day. Aw, Elizabeth. Let's go. That was all that needed to be said. Your completed party took their final steps on the boardwalk, heading straight towards the parking lot, Mrs. Suarez leading the pack. Mom, hey Mom! Nicholas shouted and waved to get his mother's attention from behind, while still using one hand to grip Derek. Guess what? Lizbeth carried me. She did? That's so considerate. Not Lizbeth. I love Lizbeth. It's so fucking cute. Stop. I love Nicholas more than anything. Yeah, Nicholas is my favorite. Lizbeth. Your moms were walking arm in arm, sharing hushed commentary with each other from a distance from the group and tittering over what they heard. You're so sweet, Lizbeth. I am. I feel that who carried Nicholas the most today should get the biggest say in what we have for dinner. I'd second that. Sounds fair to me. Then we all agree. I'd guess this means Derek will be our dinner decider for the night. Probably. Derek scratched at the spider on his cheek and chuckled airily. He shrugged without comment and simply continued to walk. His little brothers stayed at Derek's sides, and they bumped along together. You strolled with Elizabeth while the parents surrounded the sets of siblings at the front and from behind. Derek's hands were full with Nicholas and Jorge, but he snuck a fond glance over at you. None of his excitement had faded. The night was still young and bright, and you knew you could count on every person there. Despite being miles away from Sunset Bird, you felt right at home. Stop. That was so cute. I loved that one. Boardwalk is definitely one of my favorite moments. That shit was so sweet. Okay, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna save. Fun fact, most of the time when I save, even after I end this stream, I do another quick save just to make sure, because I don't trust my own Swiss cheese brain. But yeah, that means tomorrow we will be officially hitting And Then Summer Ended and doing that whole middle part, because we can guess based on our experiences that steps 1 to 2, like the moment in between step 1 and 2 when we hit And Then Summer Ended, was fairly long on its own. So yeah, safe to say that'll be tomorrow, meaning that Friday we will be starting step 3. All of next week will be step 3 except for Sunday, because Spider-Man Sunday. Make sure you check that out, because we will be finishing Spider-Man Sunday this upcoming one. But other than that, I am going to wrap up here for the night. Y'all, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I appreciate you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your night. Another big thank you so much. Genuinely getting to do this is one of my favorite fucking things, and I love getting to show y'all like my favorite little games and stuff that are like hidden under rocks. So, on that note, I will see y'all around later. And as always, take care of yourselves. Be kind to yourselves. It's hard being a person. You're doing the best you can. I am so proud of you. And don't forget to live a life that pisses off a bigot. Bye, y'all.